What do you think is the right age to start talking about menstruation with your girl child?
Talking about periods after your daughter has started getting her periods is disaster.
Why is it that they're getting their menses so early now?
Eating a lot of junk food, 90 minutes of free play time is non-negotiable. Perception about menstruation changed when I discussed openly with a male person. That is my co-founder and my husband now. Your daughter has her first periods, you don't have to make a hoo-ha about it, but can you just prepare her favorite halwa, watch a movie together or just spend time so your girl remembers कि पहली बार मेरे को periods आए थे ना पापा मम्मी दोनों मेरे साथ movie देख रहे थे. Be the parent that you wanted when you had your first period.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Modern Indian Parent Podcast, the podcast that is redefining parenting in Indian families. I am Rinie Gupta, I'm a pediatric sleep consultant, and every week we bring you episodes that will help you own your modern parenting choices, even if Nani and Dadi don't agree with them. Today's episode is very special because we have one of our most esteemed guests with us. She is a global change maker in the space of raising awareness about menstrual health and puberty, which were otherwise considered hush-hush taboo topics. She is Aditi Gupta, the co-founder of Menstrupedia. She and her husband Tuhin have empowered more than 14 million young women by giving them the right knowledge and tools to manage their periods, and they did it through carefully and beautifully designed comic books. Because of their exceptional work and its impact, Aditi made it to the Forbes India 30 Under 30 list. She was named one of the first BBC 100 women and was also invited as a TED speaker. We have her here with us today to talk about how we can make periods and puberty a better experience for our children, one that probably you wish your parents gave you. So let's welcome her on board for this episode to get this amazing conversation started. Hello, welcome Aditi. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great and I'm so excited to have you on the show. I first watched your TED Talk many years ago and it was such a impactful speech, and I was just thinking, wow. And I think it was around that time that I also watched the movie Padman, and I was just thinking about just like she's a real life Pat woman. And even though you may not be creating the physical product, but you were raising awareness about something that we so needed to badly know about. Can you please, for our audience and for me as well, I would love to know more personally from you. Tell us about your journey into this, world of raising awareness about menstrual health.
Right. So periods, I think the build-up of the whole period movement actually happened a decade ago or something. Period from being a taboo topic, it has gone to become a very trendy topic now. And I think, very honestly, when I started with this, I would have never thought that we as a country would achieve it so quickly. So really, really magical. It has been a magical journey. I started working on Menstrupedia and raising awareness about menstruation because of my own experience of facing the taboo. So I grew up in an environment where menstruation was seen as a taboo. My parents are highly educated. They love me where I am today. It has to do everything with how much they took care of me and my health. But when it came to periods and when it came to access of sanitary napkin, I did not have access because you know going and buying of sanitary napkin was also considered shameful. And the question was not that if we could afford it or not, but the question was who would go buy it. Then I would use rags, and all the women around my, in my house and around me would do the same. And this was all normal. I growing up, I did not know that why do periods happen, but somehow there was a unwritten code. Everybody seemed to know that this is something that you don't have to talk about. So this is how I grew up. I grew up looking at myself and my body as something dirty, impure. Periods, a topic, something that decent people don't talk about. So this was happening at home. At school, no, I grew up in this very small place. It is called Garhwa. It is in Jharkhand. So my school was also very small. We were just 6 students in the class. So it was more like a tuition class, you know. So our biology teacher was very close to us. He will explain all the concepts in very fun, nice way. But when we came to that chapter, the teacher skipped the topic. The entire chapter he skipped. So when at school also the teacher skipped the chapter, it really made all of us believe that menstruation is really a shameful thing to talk about. And then there were a lot of restrictions that were there. So so yeah, I grew up like that. But my perception about menstruation changed when, for the first time, I discussed openly with a male person, and that is my co-founder and my husband now. So I and Tuhin, Menstrupedia story couldn't be without us falling in love, a batchmate or a boyfriend taking care of a girlfriend. And Tuhin is a very sensitive guy and he's a very caring partner. So at college, I used to get a lot of cramps during periods. So I wasn't myself during periods. And Tuhin is just two brothers. So his teacher taught him about periods, but he thought that it is just one time phenomenon. He thought कि एक बार लड़की को आके खत्म हो जाता है. So so and when he came to know that there is this discomfort and there are these restrictions, and first of all, I clearly remember our conversation. He's like, you bleed so much and you don't die, and you say that this is normal, and you have all these restrictions all in one breath. And Tuhin is a very curious guy. He would go on the internet, look for information, and he would come back to me and share the information with me. I and Tuhin both were engineering graduates, and then we were doing our post graduation at the National Institute of Design. And this is where we meet, and this is where the whole story brews. It stuck to us that if we, being so well educated, and if we could be so ill informed about menstruation, there would be millions of girls out there who would be ill informed too. And I also remember Tuhin, the moment he realizes that there is this discomfort, I particularly remember this moment where he realizes that my mother also went through this every month and she did not share this with me, and she must be facing the discomfort while taking care of us and doing all the household work. I could have been a more empathetic son if I knew about periods. Then we went to the schools and saw that, okay, what is the scenario right now? When I and Tuhin were growing, this was the scenario. So 2009 is when our work on period education started, and it was exactly the same. The schools were missing the chapter most of the time. The chapter that would come in the classroom would come in class 8, 9, and 10, and in most of the cases, the teacher will skip the chapter. Yeah. By the way, the Union Ministry rolled out a menstrual hygiene program for all school girls in India, which will have menstrual kit and clean toilets. So that is how far we have come from a decade back. From it, when we skipping started the chapter, like it's and you're right, because that's the time that I was in school as well, and it was just teacher ने क्या बोला था, exam में नहीं आएगा, it's okay, we don't need to study this part. Because I'm like, I'm not going to set a question on this, तो क्यों पढ़ना है, कोई बात नहीं, मत करो. I know. I knew how cells divide. Mitochondria powerhouse होता है cell का. I knew how cells are dividing, but I don't know about my own body. So that is how I think our education system is so flawed when it comes to sex education and puberty education. But when we were talking to parents and teachers, they were all agreeing that we need to teach, but we don't know how. And there was this sense of shame. There is this discomfort. And I and Tuhin were studying communication design, and we knew that this is the core problem. This is a very simple process. Every month, an egg is released from one of the ovaries. It travels through the fallopian tube. It reaches the uterus. If the egg is not fertilized, your uterine lining is prepared around for that implantation. Time. Implantation. Yeah. If the uterine lining is not required, it comes out from an opening called vagina. And this is such a simple biological process. I mean, growing up, all the kids know how their respiratory system works, how their digestive system works, where my stomach is, where my lungs are, but you don't know where your uterus is. How are you going to take care of yourself? Because having periods and living in a woman's body and having periods is going to define your life. You are going to menstruate for 30 to 35 years. It starts nowadays, the girls have started getting periods at the age of 8, 9 also.
Even earlier.
We knew that we need to do this, and I and Tuhin really thought that we are the right people to do this. So at the same time, Tuhin was reading a lot about how comic book and graphic novels are used in different part of the world to talk about sensitive topic like child sexual abuse um, uh, or uh, gender based violence. And we thought that we will use the same technique. We made a comic book, and the stories were taken from the real life characters.
Yeah.
um, I think our the bottom line for us was that if a 9-year-old Aditi who is staying in Gadwa
Yeah.
can understand about periods on her own, which means that if her teacher skips the chapter, it is completely fine. And a 9-year-old Aditi growing up in a very small town in Gadwa should not be ashamed of reading it. We were very sure that we are going to make it very culturally sensitive, because even though our readers are our young girls and boys also, but parents and teachers are our gatekeepers.
Yes.
And since then, it has been such a magical journey. I mean, it has been such an empowering path that we took. It kind of became like a movement where, and this was also the first time that periods were spoken in a positive light. So this is also what we realized, that if you want to deal with shame or taboo, you have to change the narrative. And to change the narrative, you have to see that what kind of light the periods are being talked about. So let's go back in 2009. 2009, all the jingles, all sanitary napkin ads would be like laga chunri mein daag, I am down. So shame was used to sell menstruation since the beginning of the time. But at the same time, the same companies, if they will sell detergent and if they will sell body wash or something, it is always sold in a positive light. So this we needed to change. I think for the first time in our country, people realized that periods could be talked in a spoken in a positive light. I would segregate a menstrupedia era and pre-menstrupedia era, because when we established that it is possible to talk periods in a positive light, these kind of communication strategies were picked up by the brands, and the brands started to talk about periods in a positive light. It was also around the same time when I would say a kind of feminist tsunami that came in our country after the Delhi gang rape case, where more and more people were interested in women health. And I think a culmination of all of these led to the menstrual education movement that we have, along with the Padman, along with films being made. And then it started to be represented in popular media in a positive light. Now I think there is absolutely no web series or a film where a mention of period or period related problem is not there. So yeah, it's been amazing.
Amazing. Wow. You know, this whole segment, I'm just watching you talk with so much passion. Like, even if you started this project 15 years ago, the passion that you have in you to be able to, just keep going with this. This is like a mission for you. And I think it's amazing to hear about your journey.
The version of the comic that you see is probably 50th version of our content, really. It was more like a A3 size, 3 A3 size paper stuck edge to edge. Now, using a medium of comics says that, this is a fun way to talk about periods. Also, if a parent is seeing their kids reading a comic, they're saying they will not think that, the child is reading anything on a very bad
Inappropriate.
subject, or ganda topic nahi hai ye. So not only that, but also at the same time, if you make something that is very private, very small, we did not wanted to do that in our prototype. We wanted to make it bigger, so that, and it has a non-linear storytelling, which means that 2 3 girls can read it together. Boys were also picking and boys were also reading it. A comic with characters gives an environment in the house where parents and child can have the conversation, and that conversation is important, because you know what, at different stages you want to be connected with your child, but unfortunately you don't, because periods and the puberty is where you shun your child and the gates are all closed. And that is what our comic does. Our comic creates an environment where these kind of, at least period conversation is on the table.
Of course. What do you think, in your opinion, is the right age to start talking about menstruation or periods with your
Right.
girl child?
I think talking about periods after your daughter has started getting her periods is disaster management.
Right.
So before your girl have started getting periods, you must introduce her to the concept of periods. These days, the girls are getting their periods much earlier, and there is a lot of anxiety in parents around that.
But ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है? Why is it that they're getting their menses so early now?
So the age of menarche has reduced, and the age of menopause have also reduced. So if we see evolutionary wise, the amount of years we were menstruating is not needed because we are producing also lesser babies. One thing is that. The other thing is that eating a lot of junk food. Researchers have seen that those kids who are consuming more junk food, what is happening is that they are hitting puberty early. So many will say that because they are watching more TV, because they are watching more cartoons, because your kids are watching more TV and more cartoon, they are not active, they are sitting and they are idle. They are not utilizing their time to go out and play in the world. So all of these things leads to early puberty, and this could not be blamed on a child because a 9-year-old, 8-year-old girl is just a child. It has to be a lifestyle shift. In today's world, we have to be more conscious as parents. Um, our parents would say कि अरे हमने भी तो बच्चे पाले हैं, you know. हाँ. And we have also raised kids, and you turned out to be good, and but their times were different, our times are different. We are a part of production and consumption food chain where the kids are bombarded with marketing campaigns. Yeah. Where their favorite celebrity is munching that entire chocolate or just having cereals for breakfast. So all of these things collectively is a result of early puberty. Not. Yeah. One reason could not be pointed out, which means that a very conscious effort needs to be taken to a keep the junk foods away for kids. If at all you are eating outside or junk food once in a week, then conscious effort in making sure that your child is active. They are playing like 90 minutes of free play time. Free play time. Yeah. Is non-negotiable.
Absolutely. I think it's just basically these things are leading to hormonal imbalances in the body. And that's because it's all about puberty. What is it? It's all about when are the different hormone productions being kicked off. And I think one thing I 100% concur with is this is not the same age anymore that we are raising kids. I think the whole premise of our podcast, the reason we call it the modern Indian parent, because the modern Indian parent needs different parenting strategies, needs different tools. सिर्फ जो नानी and दादी ने बताया है उससे कहीं काम नहीं चल रहा है हमारा, because we are just like, I am not living the same life as you did. Yeah.
I'm not raising my kids where I grew up, or you are not raising your child where your kids grew up. Absolutely. So, and this is definitely going to affect how your body or how your hormones are going to be affected, not only during menarche but in your menopause era also. And that is fine. We just need to know how to tackle it.
So speaking of knowing how to tackle it, right? Like, let's say, for example, there is a family which has a fair bit of taboo around the whole topic. Of course, using your comic would be a great way to introduce it. But like, how would you envision, what would that conversation look like? That if there is a mom who's like, I have a girl child and I want to introduce her to this conversation, what kind of languaging and tonality can she use to introduce her to the concept of periods?
I think first and foremost, the collective wisdom around period is changing, and that is a good news. My hope is, like, let's say if we are talking about a utopian world where we all have decided that periods are not going to be taboo anymore, then period is a great milestone. I mean, periods should also be celebrated. I really think that if periods were not there, I and you were not there. So every day we should all be very grateful that our mothers had periods. If your girl is getting to the age of puberty, rather than brushing up the topic, face that question. So I understand that you as parent, your parents did not tell you about periods, but you don't have to do that. Why it is of utmost important that our generation parents talk to their daughters about periods in a positive way, because we can literally change all the generations that will come after us. So my understanding of period is how what my mothers face. But if I have a 2-year-old girl and I know that when she grows up, I'm going to give her a very positive experience around periods. And then when she becomes a mother, she will give a very positive experience to her daughter, and her daughter will give to her daughter, which means that I, as a mother right now of, let's say, a 8-year-old girl, has the power to make sure that my great granddaughter, great granddaughter, sees positive in a very, very positive light. So here are few steps. Like, first and foremost, you educate yourself.
Huh.
The first thing is educating the parents. And I am a parent. I know parenting is tough, but puberty is a very crucial phase of your child's life. So educate yourself around puberty. Other thing is, definitely have a small celebration. Let's say your daughter has her first periods. You don't have to make a hoo-ha about it, but can you just prepare her favorite halwa or her favorite ghar ka khana that she really enjoys, and maybe watch a movie together or just spend time, just so your girl remembers कि पहली बार मेरे को periods आए थे ना, पापा मम्मी दोनों मेरे साथ movie देख रहे थे, or maybe they were having fun with me, or they were just with me.
Yeah.
And I know your child will remember it once she grows up. Then educate yourself about all the products that are available in the market. It could be pad, it could be tampon, it could be period panties. Understanding that your girl will not overnight know how to manage her periods. It is going to take at least 3 to 4 years for her to get her to manage her periods and really understand her body. So I think this is something that the parents should keep in mind. Making a first period kit. If you make a first period kit, it will be good for your anxiety, it will be good for your daughter. You can put all the products, you can write a nice letter. Be the parent that you wanted when you had your first period. Yes. To your child. That supportive mother, that supportive friend. Sanitary napkin leke aao. If you're a father, have the conversation, educate yourself, and don't think that with boy father will talk, and with girl mother will talk. So collectively, all of these things will then result into a very positive period experience, not only for you but for your child also. And I think the base of all of this is being open to have conversations with your child, with your other mom friends, and just making. And I think the line that has really stuck with me is, make this experience that you wish you had. Because you're right, in your Shark Tank pitch that you mentioned, that a lot of times when girls, they get their periods, because they haven't learned about it, they feel like they're dying. I heard you say it, I was just like, oh my god, that was me. The first time I saw blood in my underwear, I was like, oh my god, what has happened to me? And I started screaming and crying. And I had guests in my house at that time, and my mom came running to the bathroom, and then she was like, what happened? I've got blood in my underwear. And I didn't know what menses were when it started, right? And at that time, it was a very calm response that she gave me. She handed me the pad, in the underwear and everything. She was like, and she taught me, like, wash it like this, do that. And I was just like, okay, I understand. And later we had like a very like superficial conversation about what it was. But now that I think about it, like this tip that you mentioned, be prepared, have a period kit, have a bit of a celebration just to mark that day as something special. That would just change the whole perception around periods from the get-go, right? I've not lived in India for a long time, so it's been a very long time since I've bought pads in India. But I remember back then it was either the black packet or the newspaper.
Yeah.
Because societal shame was also a lot. But now, at least in the chemist shops, I have seen pads being like displayed up front. Yeah. In the glass shells, and I'm just like, that is very different from how it used to be. Yeah, back then. That is also because of the placement. The sanitary napkin store are paying so much for them to display it up front. So
I see.
that is store placement. But again, sanitary napkin companies are understanding that I have to place it here.
Correct.
So it's good. I mean, the everybody in the ecosystem has a role to play when it comes to breaking the taboo around periods.
True. And I think that's such a wonderful thing. But I think like we have focused so much and learned so much about how to talk about it with girls. But I think we have got a whole other demographic, which is our men. And I don't believe that all boys would grow up to be as sensitive or caring as Tuhin, as he was. So what do you think is the right age and way to bring up these conversations with our little boys, so they can also have that empathy and understanding for the girls, their mothers, their sisters around them?
So, boys, I just want to show you this. This is Gulu. This is on boys' puberty. When we started with Menstrupedia, Menstrupedia was used to teach their boys about puberty, periods, not puberty. But we realized that, as more and more we started to talking about girls and their needs and women health, men kind of became a forgotten gender. And saying that, boys are going to be boys, I mean, it's easier to raise empathetic boys, to raise our boys, right, than to fix broken men. So, periods conversation could be the conversation when you are having puberty talk with your boys, but it cannot be just that conversation. That conversation has to have about what are the emotional and physical changes the boys are going through, what is happening down there with them. I mean, the whole conversation about the concept of masculinity, so that when your boys grow up, they don't feel like having muscles means strength and not not living in a healthy body. It's very important to teach boys also about masturbation, ejaculation, wet dreams. Again, in a very child friendly, sensitive way, you can do that. It is possible through Gulu, and parents do that. And then one of the chapter is definitely going to be about periods. So, ये crash course है. Just send them to buy pads. Also, if you want to raise guys whose dating game is top notch, raise them as empathetic men. Girls actually like empathetic men. But with parents, I think again the same thing goes as what goes with periods. With boys' puberty, parents must manage their anxiety and understand the signs. If the boys are curious about their body, if the boys are curious about certain pictures, talk to them about it. And you as parents would know the sign. Your parents, when you were growing up, denied you those signs, and they actually said that ye gandi bateं kar rahe ho, ye don't be like that, and then they make you feel ashamed of it. So pornography could not be the sex education class for our boys, and unfortunately that is what is happening. Exactly. Our boys are exposed to pornography by the time they are 9 and 10, and you can live in denial, understanding that your child, आपका बच्चा बहुत सुधरा होगा, whatever, but your child has already, that pornography has hit him through mobile phone or through his friend circle. There is no denying to it. What can we do as parents? What we can do as parents is that if your child is curious about something, they should come to you. So again, educate yourself about if masturbation is normal or not, if nightfall is normal or not, how are sperms produced. Again, a little bit of biology, that world also. And then again, talking about consent, again, all of these things then leads to talking about consent, talking about how to behave around girls. Once you have done that, I think teaching about periods is not, it's not very difficult actually. Yeah. I mean, the biology does not changes. What is the role of boy? That should be, that is something that you should communicate to your boy, which is that pad leke aa jao, be sensitive to their needs. They have some discomfort, and because they have some discomfort, be a cooperative brother or a cooperative son. That is such an important thing, and you're right, because puberty, it's not just about the physical changes. There are a lot of emotional changes happening along with it, a lot of curiosity that is growing. And when we were growing up, we didn't have ready access to our internet on the fingertips. We still had to do the phone ki wire nikal ke computer mein dalna, dial up and everything. So and that ringtone used to come. Yeah. Correct, right? Like, so we didn't have that access to information the way our children do. And I don't want my child to learn about their own body through the internet, because what they get exposed to on the internet, that will not be in my hand. Yeah. So their first exposure, before they get to the point where they are going to seek out the internet for these answers, it's better if they come to us. And for that, we have to be prepared, and having tools such as the Gulu comic book or the Menstrupedia comic book are, I feel, these should be household tools that every house should have. Yeah. Whether or not your teacher is teaching you, don't leave it to the teachers, because you have no assurance if or how these things will be taught. Yeah, I think you have brought a very important point. This is also a mindset that I'm seeing in the parents. So what mindset I'm seeing in the parents is that I'm not going to talk about it. The school will deal with it. And the school is not dealing with it. The school is thinking the parents will deal with it. And your kids are all confused. They're all confused what is happening with their body. And puberty is, again, it is that window where your kids are growing into another kind of a person. A lot of growth is happening and they are confused. This is exactly the time more child and parent communication is needed. Yeah. But this is the time when parent child communication is completely broken actually. By this time it is completely stopped in most, I mean, with all of us, that is what happened. We girls would be very close to our fathers. One period started, we were very away from our father because we were told Papa se bhaiya se discuss nahi kar sakte. The same thing, boys would be very close to their sisters or mother. Once puberty hit, they are confused, they don't know what to do. So I really think that parent child communication needs to be relooked when in the age of puberty, because that is exactly where it becomes most weaker, and that is exactly the window where it can become really really strong and can really guide your child through many other stages. I think that was so much for parents to learn from this conversation. It's been such a pleasure to be able to interview you. It's something that I never imagined would happen, but here we are talking face to face, and it's just fantastic.